Nanalo na Family Team Solomon panginginan ng 200,000 pesos.
Family Feud, 5:35 p.m.
Welcome to my episode that is called
That's okay.
Trump has announced he's agreed to a 2-week ceasefire with Iran. That came less than 2 hours before his deadline for Tehran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz or face widespread attacks on civilian infrastructure. It's also a sharp reversal from the extraordinary threat that he made earlier on Tuesday, writing on Truth Social that, quote, "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again if his demands were not met." It's not clear when the ceasefire will take full effect. Missile fire continued across Iran, Israel, and the Gulf overnight. And if it does come into force, it may not mean a permanent end to the conflict. Pakistan, which helped broker the deal, says Iranian and American delegations will come to Islamabad for negotiations on Friday. But that's not a done deal. White House correspondent Steve Holland has more.
The president is labeling this a major achievement and says the 2 weeks will give the two sides time to negotiate a longer-term deal. Now, privately, we are hearing that there are doubts among U.S. officials as to whether the ceasefire will hold. There is a belief that the Iranians are probably trying to buy time, and the U.S. officials believe that the ceasefire is a trust-building exercise to see if the agreement will hold up.
And as for those negotiations meant to take place in Pakistan on Friday, Steve says those might be up in the air too.
For now, the White House is saying that there are discussions about holding talks. The Pakistani side is expecting him in Islamabad on Friday.
Ibig sabihin
We'll
yan,
see if that actually
madonisado, wala tayong
happens.
mahigit ng
Vice
tatawad
President
ng
J.D.
Taiwan
Vance,
ASAP
who's been
mamaya.
injected into the negotiations in recent days,
Ibig
has
sabihin,
been
wala
in
tayong
Hungary
tawad
this
ng Taiwan
week, and
ASAP
it's
sa
possible he
darating
could
ng
be
Ligo
dispatched to
April
Pakistan to conduct these talks,
12.
or the president's two envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, could go. But a lot of this is still up in the air.
Israel has also agreed to the temporary ceasefire with Iran, although the status of fighting in Lebanon remains unclear. Pakistan says the deal included an end to fighting there, while Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, says attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon will continue. Iran is also positioning the ceasefire as a victory. Iran's Supreme National Security Council says President Trump accepted their conditions. In Tehran, crowds gathered, voicing support for Supreme Leader Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei and burning American and Israeli flags. Although some question why the US agreed to a ceasefire. With one woman suggesting it's to give the US time to regroup and buy time for Israel. The main stated aim for the Trump administration is to get oil flowing through the Strait of Hormuz. But even when it reopens, it may take time before prices at the pump get back to pre-war levels. Reuters Asia Energy editor Tony Monroe explains.
Well, first of all, it's not clear yet how quickly the reopening would take place. One of the requirements of this ceasefire, according to the Iranian side, is that for ships to transit, that requires coordination with Iranian forces. So that is a complication. We just don't know how onerous that is. When the strait reopens and if shipping resumes even towards pre-conflict levels, the oil that's moving is oil that's on the water. That's oil that's already been produced. What still needs to happen would be a resumption of pre-war levels of production. And it's going to take some time, could take quite a bit of time, given that some fair bit of infrastructure, including refining infrastructure, has been knocked out.
Plus, the war has proven to the markets just how much control Iran has.
There's the longer-term concern in energy markets that now that Iran has been able to assert pretty effective control over traffic through the strait, that this could become a continuous point of leverage that Tehran tries to exert.
Despite the lingering concerns, oil prices across the major benchmarks have slid by more than double digits. For more on the market reaction, here's Amanda Cooper, host of our sister podcast, Morning Bid.
Well, we're certainly seeing a burst of euphoria across global financial markets today. We're seeing stocks up, crypto up, the dollar, which has acted as a safe haven over the last 6-7 weeks, coming under pressure against a range of currencies. Investors cling on to this idea that even with questions around how long the ceasefire can last, how quickly normal traffic through the Strait of Hormuz can resume, the idea is that with energy prices coming down, that takes the pressure off the global central banks to raise rates quickly this year to combat a potentially damaging spike in inflation. And indeed, we're seeing bond yields drop sharply as investors price out the possibility of a Fed rate hike this year and price back in the possibility of a cut at some point in 2026. Good news for risk assets, good news for businesses, good news for homeowners, at least for now. That seems to be the takeaway in the first sort of 12, 14 hours since the ceasefire has been announced.
Thanks, Amanda. You can find Morning Bid wherever you get your podcasts. Clay Fuller, a former prosecutor endorsed by President Trump, has won a special congressional election in Georgia. He'll fill the seat vacated by conservative firebrand Marjorie Taylor Greene. Fuller's opponent, a moderate Democrat named Sean Harris, had been trying to win over disaffected Trump voters. Harris ultimately lost, but narrowed the gap in a district that is heavily Republican. It's the latest special election in which Democrats have made big gains heading into a crucial midterm vote this fall. New data reviewed by Reuters reveals the scale of airport surveillance being used for immigration enforcement. Since the start of Trump's presidency, more than 800 people have been arrested by ICE using tips from airport security officials. The program feeding ICE this information was designed for counter-terrorism, not to track down immigration offenders, and it's now at the center of a heated political fight. Immigration reporter Ted Hesson explains.
So in the U.S., the security system here functions in a way that allows TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, to share data with other federal security agencies. And traditionally, that's been used for tracking people who may be on government watch lists or no-fly lists that restrict them being able to fly within the U.S. But what we're seeing under President Trump is that this information sharing was increasingly used, or used for the first time, for immigration enforcement. And in our reporting, we got a sense of the scale, which had not been previously known, which showed that there had been 31,000 records shared between TSA and ICE of passengers who had been flying during Trump's presidency who may have been potentially subjected to immigration enforcement.
And by speaking with immigration lawyers, Ted and the team were able to get details of how some of these arrests played out.
They involved an Irish couple that had been in the U.S. for more than 2 decades and were detained last summer by immigration authorities as they were trying to travel from Florida, where they were on vacation, back to New York. And those parents were actually deported to Ireland, were forced to leave their children in the U.S. in the custody of older siblings who were here. There were also several high-profile cases of people being detained, including a college student who was traveling from Boston to Texas to visit her family for Thanksgiving last year. So there have been some intermittent cases that have risen to the public eye, but this is the first time that we've gotten an actual sense of the scope and realized that it's hundreds of people that have been arrested during Trump's presidency.
Ooh.
And finally today.
Station, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call Integrity for a voice check.
The crew of Artemis II are winging their way back to Earth. But while we wait, we want to make sure that you check out the photos that they have sent ahead. They're images of the far side of the moon, a place we never see from Earth, show in remarkable detail the heavily cratered surface, dark and pockmarked, scarred by impact craters through time. Above the rough ancient terrain, the Earth peeks into view, an Earthrise, a perspective astronaut Christina Cook describes.
It truly emphasized how alike we are. We have some shared things about how we love and live that are just universal.
For more on any of the stories from today, check out Reuters.com or the Reuters app. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast player. If you're listening on a smart speaker, just ask for the latest news from Reuters 7 days a week. We'll be back tomorrow with our daily headline show.
That's it for your news updates. To see more stories.